How would you describe your own football philosophy?
To keep the ball, to enjoy with the ball.
They're playing some of the best football of any team at the moment. An absolute joy to watch them.
Try every game to be protagonist on the pitch.
Composure on the ball, the authority and courage to take the ball in all areas.
Working with passion, working with ambition, working with a dream.
Brighton and Hove Albion are on their way to Europe. A historic achievement for Roberto De Zerbi's side.
Every so often, a figure comes around that changes the status quo of a sport. With the uniqueness of his philosophy and the dedication to his methods, Roberto De Zerbi is one of those people. His passion for the game is obsessive. He claims his mind is always on his work, that even his family can't take him away from it. And from his first professional job at Foggia, he's been developing an entirely distinct footballing method, one that has taken the world by storm and earned the respect of his peers.
He's one of the most influential managers in the last 20 years.
Today I'm exploring the philosophy and the vision of a man who many are calling the next great football mastermind. A man who has bent the game to his will and already influenced coaches worldwide. And yet whose work and achievements perhaps represent the greatest conflict in football today. This is Roberto De Zerbi, the protagonist. Despite the clarity of his ideas, De Zerbi's influences are unclear. According to the man himself, his work is inspired by his life and his role models, his upbringing in AC Milan's academy, the leadership of former coaches such as Foggia's Pascal Marino, and the modern greats Bielsa and Guardiola. But regardless of those influences, what has emerged from De Zerbi is his own crystal clear philosophy, and a coaching method that has been meticulously designed. In his own words, that philosophy can be reduced to 3 fundamentals. Number 1, to keep the ball. Number 2, to try and be protagonists on the pitch. And number 3, to work with passion and with a dream. In pursuing total domination of the ball, De Zerbi adopts some of the Johan Cruyff Pep Guardiola laws of the game. Structurally, he arranges his players so that they rationally occupy space, which is famously central to Guardiola's philosophy.
El futbol està ocupar racionalment l'espai i la pilota va a l'espai.
In other words, the players take up designated spaces and the ball moves from space to space, as opposed to the players moving towards the ball and progressing with it. It's this principle that creates the rigid structures we see in De Zerbi's build-ups, and it allows players to know automatically where their teammates are located in almost any given scenario, making possession and progression almost automatic.
Again, they play their way out from the back so impressively.
The structure itself is liable to change based on the opponent, but De Zerbi favours those that make his footballing principles easier to execute. For example, his often used 4-2-4 shape has arisen largely because of De Zerbi's single most important principle, the third man. A universal footballing concept, but one that De Zerbi has taken to the extreme. When you watch any of his teams build up, you realise what's actually happening is an extended web of third man passes, between midfielder and centre-back, from one pivot to the other, from forward into a pivot, each progressive pass breaking through a line of opposition pressure. And when a team like De Zerbi's Brighton understands this principle, players actively look to receive not the first pass but the second, and if executed properly, it is virtually impossible to defend.
Lovely triangle of passes there from Brighton.
Of course, De Zerbi's possession game expands beyond the third man. In build-up, he is dedicated to playing out with the ball, and expects his players to instantly recognise whether they have a numerical advantage. In more advanced areas, they'll rotate around the structure to create and exploit space. And other times they break the positional paradigm, moving forward through zones to disrupt the opposition. However, all of these things are simply principles. To understand what makes De Zerbi's football unique, we have to look closer to that second fundamental, to always be protagonists, because I think it's from here that the feeling of true uniqueness emerges. Whether it's a centre-back standing idle with their studs on the ball, or a lightning-quick passing move that shreds through the opponent, De Zerbi's teams have a very interesting relationship with time. In fact, it's time, or timing, that makes De Zerbi's teams so fascinating. They are one of the only teams I've ever seen who are happy to completely stop, just stand still, wait. It's incredibly provocative, as if they're taunting you. The crowd no doubt gets exasperated, the opposition players too, and when that frustration reaches its peak, when they tempt that pressure, that's when they're at their most dangerous. Because that's exactly what De Zerbi is waiting for. Space that didn't exist between the lines now exists. Space to be identified and exploited quickly and decisively. The static becomes the dynamic, slow becomes the fast, the calm becomes the storm. And so by manipulating time, by cycling through different rhythms, De Zerbi's teams aim to assume complete control of a game. Whether they're slow and meandering or dizzyingly fast, or even ground to a halt, their rhythm with the ball forces you to play on their terms. They become, as in De Zerbi's principle, the protagonists.
Thoroughly enjoying their afternoon here.
But not only is this approach a fascinating spectacle, it's proved equally effective. De Zerbi, whether intentionally or not, has created a possession system that gives its attacking players the luxury of space, as if they were always playing on the counter-attack. And that's resulted in teams that create not just a lot of chances, but high-quality chances. And the data tells us just as much.
That goal just sums up what De Zerbi's Brighton are all about.
But there's one more element to De Zerbi's method that deserves exploring, and that's his belief off the ball. Whenever possible, his teams deploy an aggressive man-to-man press, which can lead to a very high line compressing the pitch. The purpose of this press is not just to control territory, as in some strategies, but actively win the ball in advanced areas. And in the 22-23 season, De Zerbi's Brighton created the most shots from high turnovers in the league, adding another dimension to this possession machine. So between the defensive aggression and the possession rhythm, De Zerbi has created a football that is exceptionally dynamic, full of rhythm and crescendo, but most importantly, a type of football that you can only see in its most authentic form from his teams. This blend of positional discipline, passing automation, and remarkable use of time is uniquely De Zerbian, and the fact it's being deployed successfully at the elite level is a monumental achievement. It's one thing to design a theory of football, but it's quite another to make it a reality. And in that regard, it can't be denied that De Zerbi is a great football coach. On the training field, he's typified by his high level of involvement. Brighton captain Adam Lallana called him the most hands-on coach he's ever worked with, citing that he frequently participates in his own sessions, taking on different roles to show the players, not just tell them, the finer details of what he's asking for. And the unity with which his teams play is a testament to De Zerbi's talent for teaching. But what stands out even more from interviews about De Zerbi comes back to his third fundamental: to work with passion, ambition, and crucially, a dream. Because it is the pursuit of a dream that makes De Zerbi more than just a coach. His work is not just about convincing players of a footballing idea, but awakening their desire for something greater, a dream that appears almost impossible. At Benevento, it was to avoid almost certain relegation. At Sassuolo and Brighton, it was to take a modest club to the bright lights of European football. Whatever the dream, the collective effort required means De Zerbi must foster an incredible sense of togetherness. To do so, he doesn't just issue instructions to his players, no, he inducts them into his own footballing universe, putting relentless faith and trust in them, teaching them not only the what, but the why, the intention and meaning behind his football. It's a relationship that isn't just that of a coach or even a leader, but a mentor. And from a human perspective, it's clear his players love him for that.
He changed my life last season, so whatever he wants from me, I'll give him no problem.
And is it any surprise that in that context, this man is so capable of creating extraordinary teams? Teams in which every player is willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good, where the collective comes far above the individual, and the group behaves almost like a single, formidable organism. In fact, when it all clicks, the harmony in which De Zerbi's teams play is quite rare to see in a sport as complex as football. And yet, despite all these coaching triumphs, De Zerbi's career has known as much failure as success. At Benevento, he could not avoid relegation. At Sassuolo, he could not achieve his European ambition. Only after moving to England did his dream start to become a reality. Which serves as an important reminder that a football coach, no matter how talented, is only as good as the quality of their players. And that's where this story takes an interesting turn. Because De Zerbi, for all of his tactical genius and for his incredible leadership, is, from a certain perspective, playing an impossible game. For some, he is wrestling with the very essence of football.
When the people speak about our style of play, they are not speaking about De Zerbi, but De Zerbi doesn't play on the pitch.
In the main, De Zerbi's football is uncontroversial. Despite its peculiarities, it feels at home in the modern footballing landscape. A mix of heavy possession principles and proactive high-intensity defending. But from another perspective, we can find the argument that De Zerbi's method is one that takes football down a precarious path. Perhaps De Zerbi's greatest triumph is that he's able to generate absolute belief in his ideas. Ideas that are exceptionally strict and meticulous. Every player knows where they should stand, where their teammates will be standing, and know what options they have in almost any scenario. If the ball is here and your opponent does this, you know that you can do this. In many ways, it is the epitome of the positional game, where the team becomes a machine. This is why De Zerbi can drastically change his players without affecting the team dynamic almost at all. His system creates such specific parameters and objectives, you're less reliant on the individual's unique tendencies. In fact, you have little need for individuality, merely the raw ingredients that you can mould to your system. From a sporting sense, this can be incredibly powerful. It safeguards you from injury and loss of players. But could it not also be a source of concern? If completely different players can be made to look almost identical, if you can swap them in and out with virtually no consequence, have you lost an important part of football's essence? When discussing his team's build-up phase, De Zerbi often talks of solutions that he and his staff create for individual games, as if he were playing a game of chess, imagining the best possible move in a specific board position. But is it possible to solve football in such an abstract way? Can footballers be reduced to pawns, completing perfect actions? Is it possible to erase chance and error and create the perfect game that De Zerbi is searching for? I ask these questions not because I have the answers, but because I think it's a conversation worth having. When I watch De Zerbi's teams, I can't help but be in awe of their cohesion, the level of understanding, the collective rhythm. For the players and the fans of his teams, he is and will continue to be a miracle worker, a deliverer of unforgettable moments. Nobody can deny the authentic joy when a goal is scored or a club achieves a historical success. Yet, there's this feeling bubbling under the surface. Behind the romantic notion of keeping the ball, there is so much science. Precision, positions, angles, patterns. This method, which is so imbued with passion, is reliant on self-discipline, personal restraint. Those rhythms, which can feel so musical, are not spontaneous but pre-designed, triggered mechanically by opposition pressure. Perhaps then, the story of Roberto De Zerbi is, more than anything, one of contradiction. This collective effort to become superior, to exert dominance through shared sacrifice, to achieve this collective dream, is ultimately one man's dream, and one man's vision. In the football of Roberto De Zerbi, there is truly only one protagonist. And for better or worse, that's what makes his journey so utterly compelling. If you enjoyed this video, you can listen to an additional 9-minute discussion on De Zerbi's control of time through my brand new Patreon page. You'll hear additional quotes from Pep Guardiola and an extended conversation about decision making at the elite level of football. If that sounds interesting, check out the first link in the description and get access to all future bonus content. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to go above and beyond what I usually do, so hopefully it was worth it. You can expect more of this style of video in between my regular ones in the future. So thank you so much for watching, thanks for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.